What's up, yellow little faith, and welcome to the very first episode of Season 2 of the Fagnostic Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Hayes, and I've still got some things to figure out, so here we are, back with a new season. Y'all, so much has changed. I have moved, I started a new production company, and I am just happier than ever and so full of gratitude. On today's show, I have my good friend Stuart Bell. Stuart contributed a lot of money to my film Cognitive, and thus was listed as an EP on the film. I was fortunate enough to meet him through Del Shores several years ago. I just adore him, and I am so excited that he's here to talk to you all about his story. Stuart is a senior partner at Growing Generations, the largest surrogacy and egg donation company in the entire country. Prior to joining them in 2001, Stuart spent over a decade in executive-level positions in both profit and not-for-profit companies. As a writer with a strong emphasis on gay rights issues, his work has appeared in numerous publications over the past 20-plus years. He's the author of Prayer Warriors, a memoir published in 1999 by Allison Productions. In February 2008, Stuart and his husband welcomed their son into the world, who was conceived through Growing Generations surrogacy and egg donation programs. He is active as a donor and volunteer with local and national organizations, including Human Rights Campaign, Family Equality Council, LA Gay and Lesbian Center, and Youth Emerging Stronger. He served for 10 years on the board of the American Fertility Association, which is now a program of family equality, 4 of those years as co-chair. A native of Tennessee, Stuart holds a degree in communications from Middle Tennessee State University and has called Los Angeles home since 1992. Y'all, I am so happy to be back with y'all doing this podcast. Let's welcome Stuart to the show. All right, Stuart, thank you for being here today. I've known you for a few years, and I've known of your story, but after we had dinner last week at the famous Casita del Campo, where is it the Cavern Club? Is that what Mr. Dan calls that venue? I forget.
I believe so, the Cavern Club.
Yeah, we saw Emerson and Blake's new show, I Dreamed a Dream Girl, and we had dinner before, and I just was so, I don't know, we just talked about things on a different layer than I had ever really thought about, and I thought, I want to put this on record. So I'm really appreciative of you being here and sharing your time with me today.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
So first questions first. Also, this is the first episode back with the podcast. So this is the start of season 2. So you're the premiere.
Wow.
Are you a believer?
I am.
What does that word mean to you?
I consider myself a cultural Christian.
Okay.
And so because I was born into a family of believers, then my pathway to a higher power was through that culture, sure. Which was Christianity. But I never even felt as a child that it was the right way or the only way. It was just a way.
Sure.
And so to me, it's kind of like just a connector cord.
Yeah.
That's all.
I remember Oprah Winfrey once described it as a wagon wheel, and the center is the divine or God or whatever, and all the spokes are the routes to get there. And I remember as a child, her getting just backlash in my cultural Christian community from people who are just so convinced of, John 14:6, I believe it is, where it says, I am the way, or I am the way and the light. No one comes to the Father but through me. And it just seemed to counter everything that we're taught in these evangelical Christian households. But I love that even from a young age, you saw the bigger picture, and I can't wait to get to talk about that and define that for you as we get through this episode. The next question, just to get this out of the way, is can you just identify your pronouns for us?
I don't really use pronouns.
Really? That's okay. Has that evolved over time, or is that just something that you've always, been a little turned off to because of what he means to us in the South?
I think it's more because I've always felt like gender was very fluid for me.
Yeah.
And so I would say I identify on the male side. If we're on the scale, 1 to 10,
sure.
I'm probably somewhere around a 7 or 8. And a lot of that is just how I was brought up.
Yeah.
I think if I'd been brought up in a more fluid society, I don't know where I would land.
Yeah.
So I'm just not really comfortable with any of them. So I just call myself Stuart. And
No, I love that. Thank you for explaining that. That's really, Stuart Bell's ahead of the curve, y'all. Speaking of that, what is it like to raise a child in this city, in this environment that's completely, or maybe it's not completely, but just seemingly opposite of how you and I grew up in these strict, very binary Southern households?
Well, it's been amazing. And I have to say, it's also been very healing for me.
Sure.
he has been blessed to be able to go to private independent schools that are very progressive. And at our first, meeting with the other parents in our little junior kindergarten class, there were 4 other LGBTQ couples out of like 15 families.
Wow.
So it was just incredible. So for my son, it's normal.
Yeah.
Like, and even like when he was in 4th grade, one of the 5th grade students transitioned from female to male.
Wow.
And the whole school was just like, great, let's support Locke now. Let's make sure that Locke has everything that he needs to move forward. And so that's really been amazing to see that they just don't miss a beat.
Thank God. That's such a blessing for that kid and that family and for their friends. I'm so invested in this story in Florida about the Don't Say Gay bill. And then also with I think it's in Texas, where they're investigating the parents of those who have children identifying as trans, and trying to put the term child abusers on them. I know it's political, but it's also life and death. And I just cannot fathom being a youth in one of those states and just all the headlines are nothing more than about how you don't exist and you don't matter and your life is not worthy or valid. What the fuck? We have this bubble in California that I do find solace in, but we have so much work to do for those in other states that don't have the access to people like you and I here. And I also we'll segue into the work that you're doing with the foundation, because it really is it's going to be saving lives by allowing people to tell their stories. So for those of you who don't know, a lot of my listeners are of the Del Shores variety, so a lot of them are probably already going to know you. But tell us what you do. You work with Growing Generations, which is an organization that started out for niche families like LGBTQ families to have ways in like all-encompassing ways to have children. But what did you do before that? How did you get to Growing Generations and then the Del Shores Foundation?
So I went to Middle Tennessee State University and my degree was in communications, and I thought that I wanted to be in broadcasting. So I got my dream job, what I thought was my dream job, at the NBC affiliate in Huntsville, Alabama.
I know. I wanted to talk about that first because I'm from Decatur, which is, so I grew up watching the news in Huntsville, and you would have been there when I was in high school watching, and I'm a news junkie, so I was always watching the news. So did you work for WHNT?
WAFF, Tom Kennemer and Missy Ming.
Yes. Oh my God. No. So I was hoping you would say that because I still will tune into WAFF sometimes online. Like I'm trying to think of my favorites there. Liz Hurley, was she there when you were there?
No.
Okay. She's like an icon to me. But local news anchors to me are still like, I wouldn't get starstruck if I, went down to the Fox lot and like ran into, Meryl Streep, but I would be starstruck running into my small town, hometown news anchor. I love it.
Yeah. So I started working there, and I was doing production work in the news department, and it wasn't at all what I thought it would be. I thought I was going to be like on 60 Minutes, getting to do like long form stories. And it was just basically look at the newspaper. What's in the newspaper? What are we going to put on the news tonight? And so I was very disillusioned, and I had always, I had gravitated toward journalism because I wanted to make a difference in the world. And so I was having lunch with a friend of mine who worked at the United Way in Nashville, and just kind of telling her I was so confused with what I was going to do with my life. And she said, well, you have a lot of great skills that nonprofit groups could use. And we're supportive of this Nashville Cares, which is an AIDS organization. Would you consider, going over there? They're looking for somebody with your skill set right now. And I was just coming out of the closet. I had just graduated college. I was president of my fraternity, had a girlfriend through most of it. And
this was early 90s at this point?
Yeah, this was 90.
Okay.
So I was like, oh my gosh, but I thought, well, I need to check it out. And interestingly enough, the executive director was the wife of an Episcopal priest. So I thought, well, it's not going to be just gay, gay, gay.
Right.
So I went and I met with her, and it was awesome. And she offered me the job on the spot. and it was just kismet. I was like, oh, I'm supposed to do this.
Yeah.
And so I did that for a few years, and then I got offered a position at the LA Gay and Lesbian Center to do similar work in HIV prevention and public affairs, and so moved out to LA.
But you fought that move, didn't you?
I turned the job down first.
Right.
And 6 months later, the woman Julia, who was eventually my boss, she called me on a Friday afternoon and she said, I just really think this is supposed to be your job. And keep in mind, Matt, like I wasn't overqualified. I was barely qualified. Like this was a much bigger job than what I had in Nashville. And I was only 2 years out of college.
Right.
So this was not like, oh, there's not 100 other people that would want this job. And she just kept coming back to me. So I said, well, let me tell you on Monday. I'm going to think about it over the weekend. And she said, no. She said, you need to tell me now or I'm done. And so I said, yes. And it was the scariest yes I've ever said, because I really did love my life. But I also knew that as, you know, a gay man who was not even out to his family, who lived 30 minutes away, it wasn't going to be easy for me to stay in Nashville.
Sure.
So that was the move that got me to LA, and then eventually to Growing Generations, where I've been for 20 years, where we help all family types. But we started with the gay and lesbian community through surrogacy and egg donation and sperm donation.
What I found really fascinating in perusing the website is, and I feel so ignorant and ashamed that I did not know this, but I did not realize that through IVF, HIV positive men can still have biological children.
Yeah. It's amazing. So what happened was
we can't give blood, but I mean, you know, people who have HIV can still. I did not know this because I think I told you I'm doing this advanced study thing, which is through the FDA, and it's where I wanted to bring it up on this episode so that people heard about it because nobody knows about it. But it's basically an attempt to get rid of the bans on certain demographics who currently cannot donate blood. One of them being gay men who have had sex with another man in the past 3, 6, 9, or 12 months, depending. I forget where they are right now with the data requirements. But even so, like people with the Red Cross don't even know about this ban. Like it's such I'm just shocked at who doesn't know about this.
Well, it is total government sanctioned institutional homophobia.
Yes.
That is exactly what it is. It's not based in science at all. Gay men can also not be sperm donors.
Right.
So you can't donate blood, you can't donate sperm, but yet a straight man who may have slept with 3 prostitutes and did intravenous drugs 6 months ago is fine, you know? And so it's been something that, has been very devastating. And in the state of California, for many, many years, there was a law on the books that a person with HIV could not use their sperm to create embryos that would go into a non-romantic partner, meaning a surrogate.
Right.
And so this couple had come to me about 11 or 12 years ago, and they desperately wanted to have children, but use, you know, their sperm.
Right.
And I said, can't do it. And they were heartbroken. They were crying in my office. And I was just like, well, let me see what I can do. So I started poking around, and we found that there were a couple of clinics that were doing this work on the East Coast. And so we were able to have them go there and process the sperm. And now it's pretty common. It's not a big deal. But back then it was a huge deal. And people were really scared of getting infected, even though there's virtually no way that you could possibly get infected, even if you didn't process the sperm or wash it or do anything. But now we're at a point, I love that the signs all around town are, I don't know if they're here, but I know in Palm Springs, it's undetectable, uninfectable.
Yes. Yeah.
I just love that we're finally to that point where people realize that if you are taking your meds and you are undetectable, you are fine to have sex. Exactly.
I had an ex who was positive, and it was at the time I was having a really hard time with it. Thankfully, they were gracious enough to allow me to go through my own small growth spurt about that. But it is something that needs to be said more and more. You equals you. And I am so thankful that, like you said, it's becoming something you can just see driving down the road, as opposed to hearing about in small circles. So I want to go back to when you left for LA, because you were still talking with your family at this point, still maintaining a relationship with them. But what I found interesting in the book is that just based on the time period, let's say 1990, we were just coming out of the big part of the AIDS epidemic. And there was such an association between gay men and AIDS. And here you were, closeted, working for an organization catering to gay people. And your parents still did not really, I mean, I'm sure they deep down knew, but they didn't, they didn't put two and two together in a very clear way. It didn't seem in the book. And I keep referencing the book, y'all. I'm so sorry. It's Prayer Warriors. And we'll talk about why it's called that in a bit. That phrase is such an evangelical vernacular, I feel like, prayer warrior. It was a way to describe people in the church who were just fervently praying for one thing or another, or against one thing or another in this case. But give us the rundown on how that ended with your family and what led to you writing the book.
So I moved to LA in April of 92 and took the job at the center. And then in August of 92, I had just been at a big march in Washington. So here was the dichotomy of my life. I was like living as this super out activist who was interviewed in media. And, I had this family in Tennessee who I had led to believe that I was straight or something. We weren't sure what that would be, but I never came out as gay to them. And so in August, I flew back and I told them, and it was a much worse reaction than I thought it would be. And
because you came from educated people. I mean, they worked. I mean, your dad worked in a major university, an international university, and probably was exposed to every kind of person on the globe.
Yeah, he has his doctorate degree and he was a professor, and but their religious beliefs are that what they're doing is actually love. And that's what's so twisted, is because they feel that if they accept me and love me for who I am, that they are damning me to hell. Mm-hmm. And so they engaged in spiritual warfare, which is what they call it, which is how you get a prayer warrior, because you are in spiritual warfare to bring me back to the fold so that I don't go to hell.
It's fascinating because, like, even bringing those terms up now, I'm like, that's so fucked up. But like, that's the things we talked about growing up. The church, and the way that the church tends to present the war, or the war of cultures in this country, is through spiritual warfare. But they do it in a way where they convince the body of believers that they are on the defensive, that they are having to defend their morals, defend their values. And if that's the case, then they have to be fervent, they have to be bigoted, they have to be homophobic, because that's why I'm just so much of religion is not for anything anymore. It's just against everything that's happening around them. And so that's why I don't really even consider most religions anymore to be of any validity at all, other than the fact that they still have numbers that are, shrinking, thankfully. But these people are convinced that the world is against them, that the world's coming for their religious freedoms. And so as a result, they just double down and they become these zealots who don't live love, but do live anything that you're for. I was really, it was the letters you wrote in the book were so hard to read, because I could see the grace that you were exhibiting for your family in the void of grace that they did not offer you. It seemed that you really didn't struggle with your belief in the divine. There was one part where you did say you got angry and you were like closing people out in your life. But did you ever go through a period where you did not believe, or you were atheist, or you were agnostic?
Oh, yeah. I think I probably for about a 10-year period, I was probably agnostic.
Oh.
And it really has only been probably since being with Alan's family. My husband and I have been together for 19 years now. And so
how did y'all meet?
Pardon me?
How did y'all meet?
Oh, we met on vacation in Puerto Vallarta.
which makes so much sense because y'all spend so much time there.
I know. We love it. And so just happened to both live here. It was like one of those just random things. So I always tell people when, you're down on love, it'll happen. Don't worry, And so
Can you say it one more time for me?
When you're down on love, don't worry, it'll happen. And I, Matt, like you, I mean, I was, closer to your age when I met Alan, and people were like, you're so handsome, you're so successful, you're so this, you're so that. It almost made me feel worse about myself because it was like, well, then there really must be something fucked up.
A friend of mine came over to my new apartment recently and said, this is such a panty dropping apartment. And I was like, what does that mean? And then even in saying that, I was like, well, nobody's dropping their panties here. What's wrong with me?
Exactly. So, with Alan's family, they are the most wonderful, loving, embracing people. They are Christians, but they're nothing like the way my family is. And so that's been very healing. And it kind of led me back to, when his mom, she got cancer at 63. She was diagnosed at 63, and our son was only 6 months old. He's now 14. And so, I just adored her, and I was very involved in helping. And so when we were home in Richmond, Virginia, she asked me if I would take her to her treatments because she wanted to give her husband Warren a break, Alan's dad. And she also knew Alan just wouldn't do well, sitting next to somebody getting chemo or radiation. That's just not Alan at all. And so I said, of course. I was kind of honored that she would let me do that. And so one day we were driving home from the treatment, and I said, so what did you think about the prognosis? Because the prognosis they gave her when she had been diagnosed a few months before was 3 weeks to 18 months. And I was like, wow, how does that settle in you? And she said, well, Stuart, and Alan's family is African-American. And I only say that because there's a lot of people, and there's some truth to it, that believe that the African-American church is very anti-gay. And yes, there are parts of it that are, just like the white church is anti-gay, but not all. And so his family's been amazing. So she said, the way I look at it is, I hate to leave you guys and Quentin, and I won't get to see Terry get married or Trina get married, but I got a whole lot of people on the other side that are excited to see me. And I just started crying. I was like, what a way to look at the world. Yeah. That, we're in one dimension of this world. And unfortunately, religion has painted the next dimension in a very literal way, as opposed to it being just more abstract, something that we don't understand, but we know there's an energy there that's calling to us. And so that's really when I kind of started coming back to my own faith and realizing that I could reclaim it my way.
Yeah.
I don't have to do it the way I was taught. And that's been very healing for me.
Yeah, that's I'm about to expose something that I've not told anybody yet, but a couple of close friends. But I'm working on a companion book for the podcast called Lessons of a Fagnostic. And it's basically just going over the first season and my journey from wanting to squash religion to wanting to challenge religion to then finally coming to a place of wanting to take things that I value from my former religion and still being able to mesh that into how I see the world now. Because that's where I landed, is like, you know what? There are Bible verses that are really relevant to what I'm going through in life, that I can disassociate from the hatred and bigotry that was known of evangelical Christianity growing up, and appreciate that and be guided by that now. I think that everybody's journey is so different and on their own timelines, but I love that you give that weight, because it's kind of where I've landed as well, of recognizing, like, I don't have to call myself atheist or agnostic or Christian. I can just call myself, alive and really finding fruit everywhere around me, whether it be from the Bible or the Quran or, from a secular, radio song. That makes me sound ancient. I think that's so great that you give that way. Thank you for saying that. And I've been fortunate to meet one member of his family, Trina, who was also at this dinner last week, and I just fell in love with her. But she does work in HIV as well through Gilead. So is it just chance that both of you made careers in that department of HIV research and education, or how did is that?
Well, she started her career in nonprofit work as well.
Okay.
So specifically targeting at-risk youth, and kind of specializing in HIV. So Trina has, um, all these young gay Black men who call her mama, and because they didn't have a mama that loved them. And she is just the most loving, giving person and has
Yeah.
literally saved lives. And so she's now at Gilead doing education for Gilead, but for many years she was in a couple of different nonprofits. She was at the Kaiser Foundation for about a decade doing HIV work in small communities all throughout the South, which is so important because there's so few resources there.
God bless her. I can see why people call her mama. She does have like that warm, just like y'all at my table right now kind of energy.
Yep. And she shares that with everybody.
Oh, I just adore her. You're so fortunate to have found a family like that. I love my family, and we've been through a journey, and we're very close now. But I long for an in-law family that's just like that, just like loud. I just want to go and like, because Southerners, we're so kept and prim and proper, and like, even in your book you talk about the holidays. It's just like, there's kind of unwritten rules to how you celebrate, and I just want to be a part of family that's just like a giant hug, and like we just party and laugh and live. After the book came out, how did your family respond? There's not much more damage that could have been done, just with all the letters back and forth. But what did they say? Did they read it?
So I sent each of them a book with a letter, trying to say that I did this not to hurt them,
right?
But to really help others. Because when I was coming out, all the books that were on the market that you could get at the gay bookstore were basically, oh, they'll be upset at first, and then they'll have you and your lover over for Thanksgiving.
Yep.
And so my experience was so polar opposite that I knew that there had to be other people in the same situation, not just children, but parents. I wrote the book as much for parents to look at it and go, wow, I don't want to treat my child that way.
Yeah.
So I felt that I even left a lot out of the book that I could have said that would have been maybe personally harmful to them. And so I felt the book was very fair. They did not. And now some of them, like my sister-in-law, Barb, would tell you it's more than fair. But at the time,
you and Barb are good now?
Oh, Barb and I have been great for years now.
Oh, good. What a redemptive story.
I know. But at the time, she was so upset. And she actually wrote, if you go on Amazon on the book, if you put in Prayer Warriors, Stuart Hal Miller, because that was my name before I got married, you'll see the reviews. And both my sister-in-law, Barb, and my sister, Abby, basically called me a drug-using liar, that none of this ever happened, that what was wrong with me, that people just wanted to pray for my goodness. And, it was just really interesting and hurtful, because it was like they knew it was true.
Yeah.
And they knew that I wasn't, I mentioned in the book, that yes, I have, as many young people did at the time, I've tried drugs and stuff and was experimenting with sex because it was just all new to me. But I was never like a drug addict or, anything like that. And they just like wanted to point out my weaknesses instead of saying, here's all the great things that he did for our family.
Yeah. What about your mom? I really rooted for her in the book. And I forgive me because I don't know where y'all ended up in life, but I really kept thinking like, she's going to come around. She's going to come around. I didn't have much hope for your dad, to be honest. But your mom, I kept just like really hoping the next page would say like, I love you. I don't get it, but I love you.
Yeah, that's never happened, unfortunately.
I'm sorry.
And so, where I had to kind of draw a line in the sand really was when we had Quentin, our son, and he's 14 now. So up until that point, we didn't have any, after the book came out, we probably didn't communicate for 5 or 6 years. And then I visited them probably about 18 years ago. And, but when we had Quentin, they would not meet Alan, my husband. And so,
which is so unfortunate, because for those of you who don't know Alan, he is not, it's impossible to be around Alan for 5 seconds without smiling or laughing. Truly, he is just boisterous light.
Yeah. So I finally just kind of had to draw the line in the sand and say, this just can't be part of my family. You can't be in my family, which is Alan and Quentin and me. That's our family. So if you want to be in our family, you have to take it as a package. And if you can't, then we just can't be around. But my mother never has ever come around, even in private, and said, I understand. I love you just the way you are. I accept you. She has always believed that, homosexuality is wrong and that it's a sin and that, it's going to cause me to go to hell. Now, here's what's interesting to me. Two of my siblings are divorced, one twice, and they're fine because in my mother's world, they did a sin and then they asked for forgiveness. But because I'm living in sin, that's why I'm going to hell, because I'm living in it. I'm not doing it and then saying I'm sorry and not doing it again.
So even though she said, because I think in one of her letters she said, I don't believe you can lose your salvation. So but she's given up on that theory.
I think so, because it's not like the whole question is, can you be saved if you are continuing in their world to live a life of sin?
Right.
And so now the funny thing is I'm married now legally. Yeah. So you would think that would be okay. Then I could live with my husband and, do whatever I wanted, but not in their world.
But their biblical law trumps and I hate that I use that phrase, their biblical law trumps our federal law. There's also, you're such a wordsmith, Stuart. I'm going to see if I can find it real quick. Because it was the bit about, there was a poem that your dad sent you about the porch light. And he was just saying it kind of is like the prodigal son in a sense, is the way that I read it. And your response, you just kind of turned it on its head and said, is the porch light really on? Because there seems to be little or no room for any light that shines outside of your realm. And I underlined it and highlighted it because I just thought it was such a beautiful way to question the unconditional value of this love that you purport.
Yeah. Well, it always, was like that. It's the sad thing is when I was growing up in the church, because I'm, older than you are, you grew up with probably the worst time in the church where they were preaching about gay stuff. But when I was growing up, that didn't even really ever get talked about, right. And the church was pretty much, I remember when Bill Gothard and other people focused on the family came out, it was all good. It was all about being together as a family, loving each other, taking care of one another. But then by the late 70s, early 80s, I think they realized that to be really successful, you have to have fear. You have to have a villain. You have to have somebody to hate. And so basically that abortion and gay rights became the two things that they could villainize people about. Yeah. And so that was when you were growing up, it was gone. Like what I experienced from those early days of love and all of that was gone. It was just like, but luckily I was about 18 then. And I was like, well, screw you. I'm out. This is just not right. So, it's been sad.
Yeah. And I think that, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think it's also why you probably were interested in my short film Cognitive. And so for those, again, I've talked about it a few times on this show, but I did this film called Cognitive. And the premise is that there's a little boy who thinks he has AIDS because of what the church teaches about homosexuality, that that AIDS is God's punishment for being gay. So anyone who's gay is going to go to hell because they ultimately have AIDS. And so this little boy just, on their cognitive understanding of what they're hearing from the pulpit assumes at 8-9 years old that he has AIDS. And I just, first of all, I'm so appreciative for you being a part of that, because you and a couple others were the big donors to get that movie greenlit and off the ground. And as a result, it's not just won many awards, which is great, but it's helped people find healing, which from the work that you did with your book and the work that I did with that is all that we want in telling our story, is just so that nobody else will have to go through what we went through to find our own healing as it relates to spirituality and sexuality.
Oh yeah. When the book came out, I was amazed at, and the publisher was as well, because back then we didn't, this came out in 99. So people didn't have like my email address necessarily, right, where they could contact me easily. So they wrote letters to my publisher. So I got written mail. I shouldn't even call it fan mail, because it was really mail saying, you told my story.
Yeah.
And I thought I was the only one. And it ranged from people who were 15 to people who were in their 80s, and so it's very similar to Dell's work. It's like he's telling people stories that maybe it wasn't exactly like that, but it's what they kind of went through. And the same with your movie. I mean, I remember you sent me the email, and I think it was like 5 minutes. I was like, I'm in. And I remember Dell saying, Matt was like, what just happened?
Yeah.
How did it happen so fast? I was like,
yeah,
because it's a great story and it needs to be told.
What it made me realize too, that like you just gave the age range of like young to old, but there, no matter what age we're at, people are still just wanting to be told that they're okay. They can go their whole life. And I'm sure you've seen it. People addicted to their work to compensate the emptiness inside. People addicted to working out because they just need to feel pretty somewhere. And that's, I mean, there are days where the universe just really helps to keep me fulfilled and pursuing my goals in this industry. When people, drop a line on, Instagram or email after seeing it on Amazon and just say like, I needed that, like that provided healing. So I just feel like it's our charge to keep telling our story so that that one kid somewhere, that one guy, still not out to his family at the age of 70 can just feel validated, even just for a minute. It's so important.
No, it is. And, I wanted to say, we were talking earlier about the experience of, my child, but what I really believe is if you look at any 3-4-year-olds, they love and accept everybody.
Yeah.
Like there is no prejudice, there's no homophobia. They kiss each other, they hold each other's hands, gender doesn't matter.
Yep.
It's not until they start hitting 5, 6, 7 that starts changing. And that's because what they're being taught. So they're being taught that all is not okay, that there are issues that you should avoid. And it's just really sad because, you're lucky. Like you said, we're lucky we're in this bubble, but you don't have to go far outside of LA to get out of the bubble.
No, you do not. You can go an hour away, if that.
Yeah.
How did you get in? Tell me how you got involved with Dell, because I want to segue that into the Dell Schwartz Foundation, and we can do a plug for that as well, because we just are in the midst of reading all the scripts that came in for our first festival. But how did you find Dell? Because it was a mutual fanship, from what I understand, right?
Well, so what happened is I saw Dell's film Sordid Lives in 2000 at the Limley Theater, Sunset 5 Theater.
Uh-huh.
And a friend of mine had already seen it. And she said, we've got to go see this movie. She's from Texas and I'm from Tennessee. She said, you've got to come with me. So I was like, okay. And so we went, and I had never seen anything like it. It was a packed theater and people went crazy. And I had to go back 4 or 5 times just to hear all the lines because people knew what was coming up and they'd start laughing. So anyway, So I just fell in love with Dell and I started researching and all that, but nothing really happened until probably maybe a year or so after that. And Tommy Waffle and his partner, Rich Vaughn, had told Dell about me and that I had written this book. And so Dell read my book, and then he wrote me a fan letter and asked if we could meet. And so it was so funny. Like here I am, this kind of unknown person that had written this book, and Dell, who I just idolized. But anyway, so we got together, and it's just been a great friendship ever since, and a working relationship. I've helped produce and finance some of his work, and to put
it lightly, you've helped to fund and finance some of his work. I mean, we talk. I would say you come up daily about how appreciative we are of just all that you do for us individually, but in the greater picture, all that you're doing for everyone who's seeing our work. I mean, you are a key part of that.
Thank you. But what I think is, like, when you find someone that can tell a story the way Dell can, that moves an audience through comedy, through emotion, and gets them from point A to point D or C or whatever in one thing, it's just amazing. And he does that. And I wish I had millions and millions of dollars that I could give to make his work more known, because but that's why we came up with the foundation, was a way to do it so that these stories don't die with Dell.
Yeah, because not everyone, I mean, growing up in the South, there was nobody that I could look to growing up that had the means or the outlets or the wherewithal to tell a story of redemption that I needed to hear in order to continue waking up in the morning. And so with the foundation, we are really fortunate and lucky to be seeing all these scripts. So we were doing our first Del Shores Foundation Festival, a writing script festival, and we're seeing plays and screenplays come in from, we're only accepting from Southern queer voices. And some of the, I don't know if you've gotten to read any of them yet, but I'm one of the jurors. I'm blown away. And I'm so encouraged that these voices are still in this, because sometimes I regret that I don't still live in the South and because I'm opinionated and loud and, like to get on social media. And sometimes I wonder if I could make a greater impact if I moved closer to the South again. But to know that these voices are still there and with their talents and that they're going to be able to get these things off the ground just makes me have no fear for the trajectory of the queer community in the South.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm so excited about it. And, we knew that we needed to take Hollywood to them if we were ever going to get these stories told, because they would never be able to get to us. I mean, Matt, I even had a job waiting for me in LA, and I was so terrified to leave the South.
Yeah.
Because it's your home. It's all you've ever known.
Yeah.
And so, you came to LA. I think you're much braver than I was. because you were just like, I'm going to do it. And Dale did the same thing. But it's hard. Yeah. It's really hard.
I look back because I got, drove out here. Everything I owned in my car probably had $5,000 and maybe closer to $10,000 because I just finished working on cruise ships and acquired a good bit of money. But if I knew then what I know now, I would never have come, even knowing that I'm going to find some success and meet great people, because there's something that is beautiful about ignorance that's required to make a cross-country move. Whether it's brave or stupid, I don't know. But I'm so thankful I did. It got me, I'm seeing my work have impact in a way that I would never have had otherwise. And a lot of it's largely in part to people like you, and obviously Del as well.
Yeah. And I would say, Del has created a community of love and acceptance, that he welcomes people in. And that's unusual in Hollywood. Yeah. Hollywood is usually about who am I going to keep out because I've got to keep my piece of the pie.
Yeah.
But Del has never been like that. Del's always been expansive, but he's always said, you know what? There's room for all of us.
Yes.
So he just has this huge circle of love. And you and I were both lucky enough to get into that.
Oh my God. Yes. Sometimes I look at the trajectory of my Los Angeles chapter that's going on 9 years now. And I just look at the person that introduced me to the person that made me aware of the concept, that made me introduce myself to that person, and just that path that got me to where I am. And it's just, there's no way for me to not believe in something higher just based on the fact of where I am today alone.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So let's give a good plug for the foundation. So we have these scripts coming in, so we're not taking any more scripts, but for, the next year, definitely people should follow the Del Shores Foundation online and learn how they can submit their scripts. But what are we in need of? Besides money, how can people get involved with the foundation?
Well, I think spreading the word. We're blessed with having 25 plus, I think, theater partners already. We have quite a few film festivals. So that's one of the beauties of doing this foundation, is that it's marrying. Sorry, I'm Southern. I can't say certain words.
I know.
Marrying. It's bringing together these, groups that have done Del's plays, these film festivals that have shown his films, that love him. And now we're going to be able to say, we've got the next stories we want you to share. And that is worth gold. If you are a young filmmaker, to be able to know how to get your film into these festivals, it's so difficult, and it costs money, and you have to know people. So we're bringing not only the festival part of it, where that's important, but also access to, the winner of the theater award will actually, one of the 25 theaters partners will produce that show.
Yeah.
A professional production of your show.
Yes.
So, I think we just need people to help spread the word. we have a great ambassador program, which for $25 a month. And, I don't want to sound like, the UNICEF, but it's like less than 2 cups of coffee a month at Starbucks. You can help a young queer writer tell their story.
Yeah. And if you want to give more, you are more than welcome.
Exactly. But
we have nonprofit payroll.
That's right. We are a nonprofit. It is tax deductible. So yeah, there's just lots of ways to get involved, but go to the website, delshortsfoundation.org, and you can read all about us. We have an event coming up in Nashville at the end of April. And that's going to be a wonderful event where we're kind of introducing, and we'll be going to other cities in the South too, but all culminating on August in Dallas with the festival, where we'll be reading the winning plays and shorts and all of that. And it's going to be just great.
No, I'm so excited. Are you still in contact with Nashville Cares? What are they doing well?
They're doing very well. I am in contact them through friends that are donors and stuff. So yeah, I've kind of kept up with them, and I've been a major donor to the Gay and Lesbian Center here for 25, 30 years. I mean, I've been gone now since 97.
I know my pharmacy is at the LGBT Center. And so when I'm in line to pick up my Lexapro, I always see you and Alan's name on the marquee that's scrolling.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
That's funny.
It's funny because I actually know a few names on there, and I'm like, God, I have some really great, successful philanthropic friends.
Well, it is the one thing I have to say about growing up in the church that really stuck with me is giving 10%. And I don't know that I give 10%. I don't break it down, but I give a lot. And yeah, I never hesitate, because I really do believe that whether you believe the religious version or just, karma, that, the more you give, the more you're going to get. Yeah. Not to give it for that reason, but that's always just been true for me.
Yeah.
I remember there were times when my parents would be struggling financially, and they always gave 10% off the top to the church.
Yeah.
And I admired that. And we never went hungry, and we had a community that would help take care of us if we needed it. And I think that's what I've wanted. I think gay people have done such a great job of creating that same kind of community, because we had to, because when AIDS happened, there was nobody there for us. Yeah. Ronald Reagan wouldn't even say the word when his friend Rock Hudson was dying.
I know.
And so we had to do this. And so I feel like it's my church now. My community is my church, and I'm going to take care of my gay community.
I love that. That is how I think of you, is that mindset. I'm so glad you got to come and talk to me for a little while today, and for people to hear about the foundation and Growing Generations and just your journey, and just the redemption that you found in yourself. I mean, I feel like that 10-year chapter of your spiritual struggle, like I just didn't really know, but I'm so glad that you voiced it today, because everyone is going through it. And that's why I do this podcast, because I want to be a part of people being able to get to the end of that chapter of anger at the divine or anger at the universe, and find a place of peace. And so you can move forward, because it seems like your life didn't really start to really soar until you found that, right?
Yeah.
Well, again, Stuart, thank you. I'm going to also put a plug for donation purposes because you know how you can on Instagram, you can have fundraisers and stuff. So I'm going to put the Del Shorts Foundation information on there and start a fundraising campaign. So hopefully we'll get some more munties out of this episode.
Please.
Yes.
Thank
All
you.
Right. Well, again, thank you. I'll see you soon. Give my best to Alan. Okay.
All right.
All right. Talk soon.
Thanks.
And all the people said, gay men. Thank you all for listening to another episode of the Fagnostic Podcast, hosted by me, Matt Hayes. You can find me at matthayes.com. That's MATHAYES.com, or on just the millennial socials at Hayes on It. HAYES on It. Please go subscribe, review, and share this podcast. And in the meantime, peace be with all y'all.
Hi, Michael Spicer here. Matt Hayes forgot to put my name in the credits of his podcast as the composer, but I'm here to tell you that I wrote the music for his podcast. Whatever it's called, I don't know.